Welcome. My name is Louis, aka Louis de Frenchy Monette. You are watching Ready, Set, Multiplex, Episode 1. We have a lot to talk about today. Hey, we're blessed. It's our first episode, and we already have a special guest. And also, we have my co host. We're going to start with him, Mr. Teddy the Bear Fika. Also, the co-showrunner of Multiplex, Caleb. How are you, sirs?
I'm very good. Well, we're supposed to start with Teddy. My bad.
No, that's okay, Caleb. We're really happy to have you here. I'm doing excellent, Lou. This is our first episode, and we're very excited to have you here, Caleb, as our first guest. Start at the top is my motto, so I guess we've already done that. We're doing well. It can only go down from here. So we're part of the Schmoes of the North fan page up at Canada, and we're huge fans of Multiplex, and are very excited to do this. Now, we've just been sort of connecting with everybody in the league, just kind of putting the show together for the first time, and we have started a movement called the Avengers Assemble movement here. So we are the Canadian faction of fans for Schmoedown and Multiplex, and we'd love to see as many Canadians get involved as they can, so that we could bring the show up to Canada as well, and maybe bring more Canadian competitors to Multiplex as well.
Amen. And not just Canadians in heart. Anyone who supports Schmoedown, that wants to see Schmoedown go global, is welcome on our page and is welcome on Multiplex as well. Now, for Multiplex, it's very interesting because we're both new at this, right? So we've been digging in, we've been watching, and there's a lot of good competitors. There's a lot of good talent. I want to start out with your thoughts. How did you get first involved with Multiplex?
Yeah, so in order to understand how I first got involved in Multiplex, you kind of have to understand the history of Multiplex. So Multiplex was already established by the time I got there. So Multiplex started in about July of 2018. I might have my dates wrong, so forgive me, but I'll be as accurate as I can be. About July of 2018, and it was started by Timothy Smith, Kane McMillan, and Caleb Coho primarily. Those were the three kind of starters. And Jake Marangoni was also one of the original founder, current Warzone singles champion. Jake Marangoni was one of the, I don't know if he was technically a founder, but he was brought on to run Warzone. Kane McMillan and Caleb Coho were there to run fandom, and Tim Smith kind of was the overall commissioner. The admin team has kind of changed a lot since then. Now the kind of official breakdown is me and Cody Newberry are the showrunners of Warzone, Caleb Coho and Tim Bercala, who Tim Bercala is Robert Parker's brother-in-law, the showrunners of fandom currently. And then Cody Newberry also kind of helps out with fandom, and then Brian Michaels is the editor for Warzone, and he's the best editor of all time. But yeah, so I kind of got in. So I joined the Multiplex Facebook page in about October of 2018. Okay. And at that time, Warzone was going through some problems. Fandom was doing very, very well. Warzone was going through some problems in that Jake Marangoni just felt a little bit overwhelmed as far as the workload, and there just wasn't enough time to just get matches out once a week. Even they at that time they were just doing one match a week, and that was just a little tough for really only one person to handle, because Jake Marangoni was doing like some writing and some editing and the scheduling, so it was a lot. And then Jake Marangoni decided to take a step back. So then Tim Smith and Brian Michaels took over, but that wasn't quite the right fit. And then Cody Newberry, I had not played a Warzone singles or teams match yet. I made my Multiplex debut in the Multiplex Gauntlet, which was kind of a free-for-all thing, but it was Warzone, fandom, sports, TV, and fandom TV. Sports and Fandom TV are two defunct divisions now. We kind of set back just because we wanted to focus a little bit more on movies. But it was those four, and I made it all the way to the end. I was like the third person in out of 10. Made it all the way to end, lost by 1 point to Eli McKeag. But I was pretty happy with my performance. But I still had not played a Warzone singles match because Warzone wasn't really putting out matches in like the first few months of 2019, just because it kind of felt like there was a discrepancy of just not feeling like they were able to get enough work done. And then Cody Newberry, who was brought on to join the admin team. Cody Newberry messaged me because he saw me host in another league, and he was basically like, do you want to show run Warzone? I'd never done anything remotely close to that big, but I was like, you know what? I'm up for the challenge. So that was kind of when Warzone started. And that's where things get really interesting, because that's when Cody and I were both, because before that, Warzone was very much like the Schmodown in terms of format.
Okay.
Especially in round 3. Round 3 was very much the Schmodown, right? It was pick 3 numbers, those are your numbers, and then you get 3 questions from those random numbers.
Yeah.
If you watch any of the more recent matches, like from mid-2019 on,
you're betting, yeah.
It's very different format. It's pick what you want for your 1, your 2, your 3, and your 4-pointer. And that was kind of the brainchild of both me and Cody Newberry. We both kind of were like, we want to do something different with our round 3. We don't want to just do what the Schmodown's doing. We want to do something different. We want to add more strategy to it. We don't want it to be so luck-based.
Right.
And that's kind of when we came up with the idea for that. And that went really well. And Brian Michaels was able to get out, help us edit, and we were able to schedule, and we were able to host and get out 3 matches a week, which was huge. And because that let us do a 32-person singles tournament in the summer of 2019. Damn. And that was kind of a big deal for us, just in terms of the trivia aspect. And I think that's kind of where Warzone got more attention.
Well, that actually brings up our next question. Not to cut you off, but I think this will lead the right way. Is when did you and your team know that you really had a hit on your hands here and could start to really expand the league?
I think the match. Well, I don't know when. I can't speak for anyone but myself. For me personally, the moment when I knew that we had something special and different was Jake Marangoni versus Ethan Beller. That match was round 1 of the 32-person tournament. It was one of the first matches we did in the singles style, because we had done the 16-person team tournament, because we were like, okay, for our first matches, we want to kind of put singles in the back seat and just see how can we do with teams, and let's just focus on teams. So we did that in the spring. It worked really well. And like, okay, now let's do a giant singles tournament to kind of make up for that. And that's when we decided to do 32-person tournament. And it was the number 1 seed, Jake Marangoni, versus the number 32 seed, Ethan Beller.
Wow.
And Ethan Beller won.
Wow.
All right. So it started out with an upset, blow your mind event, and there you go. There's your tournament starting.
Exactly. Because I don't think anybody expect that. And that was also it wasn't just that it was an upset. Both competitors had such incredible skill. And I think that's kind of when we both knew that we could really do something special in terms of showcasing the skill that our competitors have. That's why the questions are a little bit harder, because we do want to show off how good our competitors are.
Yeah, because you want to be the hardcore league, you want to be distinguished, be like, if you're in this league, it's because you know all the little minutiae of every little detail,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we like to have fun matches for more players who want to get in, and like the debut matches, we try to make debut matches a little bit easier.
Okay.
But then as you keep winning, questions are going to get harder. That hill is going to get steeper. Once you're playing in like the bigger matches, you're going to be getting very, very difficult questions. We do want to, shout out the trivia, but we also want everybody to be able to have a good time too. Which is a tough tightrope to walk.
It is. And actually that opens up a question that just kind of comes to mind. With the difficulty of a lot of the matches and the idea of giving slightly simpler matches for a starting player to encourage more people to come in and play trivia with everybody, would there ever be an opportunity for like the main league and then a sort of secondary league that may not be quite as extreme difficult? Is that something that's ever crossed your mind?
That's definitely something that has popped into my head before.
Okay.
It's really just a case of if that happened, I think that would be further down the road. That would not be this season. I think this season we just kind of want to perfect what we've got, and we want to do. And I know this is a question for later, so I won't get too much into detail, but we want to do more crazy and wild stuff. So I don't really see that happening this season, though. I wouldn't mind that happening, but I kind of like just the one-on-one, match format. So we do. I do kind of try to walk the balance there. But I think one match that is an example of that is a match that we filmed, has not been released yet. It comes out on Thursday. Abby Friel versus Adelaide Spence. That's a match that we lowered the difficulty. That was our first time really trying to establish what do we want a debut match to look like. And I think that's a very good idea of what we want our debut matches to look like. The questions aren't softballs, but they're not super hard either. We kind of tried to hit the balance there, and
I won't be clean if I do a match. I won't be like destroyed. It's kind of like what I need.
Exactly. Right? It's like we want people to be able to play along and watch and like no questions as things go along, but we also, I think one thing that sets the league apart is our emphasis on studying.
That actually goes to what I wanted to go in the next question is going on 2020. What do you think sets Multiplex Movie Warzone apart from the other leagues? What are you trying to establish here this year?
Yeah. So one of the big things that I think sets us apart is the emphasis on studying. The fact that round 2, there are only 8 categories on the wheel. 4 of them are the 2 opponents' strengths.
Okay.
Right? So, and the thing about strengths is we allow our competitors to get very specific with strength. We basically, if there are 6 movies in the 6 movies or more in the category, it's fair game. So if you want to do something like 70s action movies or movies that star Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson, or something like that, we allow our competitors to get creative with what they want, because it's a case of you kind of got to play it strategically. You can go with something more specific, but then that's also more specific for your opponent. So if your opponent is a studier, like somebody like Kurt Kalakowski, who's or Jacoby Bancroft, then you might not want to go as specific. You want to go with something bigger if you're playing with one of them against one of them, because if there's somebody who's going to study and basically turn your strength into one of their strengths, then you kind of want to balance that. So that's where strategy. We really have an emphasis on strategy and studying. Right. Like that's one of the biggest things. Like if there's a category where somebody likes to put on 2010s musicals, or they put that on the wheel. They kind of realized that was a mistake because they didn't account for the fact that animated musicals would also be asked in that category.
Fair enough.
And they weren't really prepared for that. They were only thinking about live action musicals. So the next time they did it, they asked for 2010s live action musicals.
Okay. So it's not just if you have good movie knowledge, is how you play your strategy and what you study, and plus what is your current knowledge in movies. So there's a lot of components to think about before going to a match. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was just going to say something too, with only 8 slices on the wheel. If you have your 2, they have their 2, you've got opponents and chooser's choice. That doesn't leave much room for, well, there's maybe a chance that I'll get my thing. You've got a much better chance of getting your category in this than you would even in the Schmodown, which could have a major impact because, as you know, as we all know, the wheel can either kill your gamer or win it for you, right? So that's really exciting. I didn't realize that was the only number of categories.
That's something where we try to eliminate the extreme amount of luck. There's always going to be a little bit of luck, but we try to eliminate luck a little bit, right? That's why there are some leagues where there's another league that lets you go specific with your strengths, but you don't have to tell your opponent what your strengths are until they get into the match.
Oh,
right?
wow, okay.
We don't do it like that and there's nothing wrong with doing it like that. It's just something different we do. We like the way we set up matches is we take the competitors in the match, we put them in a Facebook group chat, and we say, okay, we need your strengths. And then they will give us their strengths right away. We expect the strengths right away usually. And then both competitors have plenty of time to study the strengths that are on the wheel before the match, right? Like, one example is when me and Sean Sandberg played Blockbuster Video. We got Blockbuster Video's strength of 80s John Carpenter movies. And the weeks before the match, I watched every 80s John Carpenter movie because I had never seen like The Thing or Big Trouble in Little China before.
Oh
wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that was actually great because I really liked those movies after I saw them. But that's a case of then we spun that. And, we were stuck with it, but we went 10 for 10 it because you put in the effort to study. And that's kind of the case of studying is everything, right? Like if you spin your opponent's strength and you're not prepared for it, it's nobody's fault but your own because you had the weeks to prepare.
If I can interject, if you are able to disclose this, is there one player that is a master of that kind of study and strategy that you're talking about?
Oh, that's a great question. Great question. There are a couple of people that come to mind. I think one person that Jacoby Bancroft. Bancroft is very good at it.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, Jacoby Bancroft played Ethan Beller. Ethan Beller put Charlie Kaufman on the wheel. Jacoby spun first. Jacoby got spinner's choice. Jacoby took Charlie Kaufman.
Oh, wow.
I loved that move when I was watching that. That was great.
And then Jacoby went 10 for 10 in Charlie Kaufman. That got 10 out of 10 points, which is just that's such a gutsy move. Because even I, if I'm studying, if I get spinner's choice, I'm going to take one of my own strengths.
Of course.
That's not what Jacoby did. And it really paid off for him. It was such a gutsy move, but it was really awesome to see.
Well, I thought it not only did it give him the 10 points, but it really took Ethan out of the match. It put him out of his element huge after that as well. And I think it really affected his third round, which lost him the game in the end. Because that could have gone either way before that, I think.
I agree 100%. It is kind of a mind game too, in a sense. And it's also, if you're spinning first, then Ethan can't hit. Even if Ethan hits spinner's choice, he can't have Charlie Kaufman. So it's a very good strategy like that. Another player who I want to shout out, who I think is very good at studying and strategy, is Brian Michaels. Brian Michaels, one of the only people, there are only 3 people to be behind in round 1 and then knock out their player by the end of round 2.
But Brian's scary. Brian, he knows his stuff, and I've been looking at him. He kind of feels like a heel. He's very cocky, but he has reason to be. He has a lot of confidence in himself, and it shows.
Brian is very interesting. I view Brian as like our Drew McQueen. I think.
Okay.
I think Brian, it's very much like he has that natural just kind of, but he's not very he doesn't want to join a faction. He's not very interested in storylines or anything like that, but he still has a specific presence. So he's not really playing a character. He's just kind of, he is the character. That's just who he is, but he's a good guy. But he can get a little cocky sometimes. But I think everybody can get a little cocky.
But don't get me wrong, I love his cockiness because it really showcased what he can do. I've seen a couple of his matches in this free for all, and man, I would get destroyed. A lot of people, they have a hard time against him. It shows, and he deserves being recognized.
Definitely. And to kind of go back to what the question about who's good at studying and strategy, Brian was behind. He played Dominic Rizzi the second time because the first time Dominic Rizzi barely beat him. The second time, Brian he goes and he spins. So it's 5-4 coming out of round 1. Rizzi's in the lead, and then Rizzi spins, and Rizzi gets Brian's strength of 80s Billy Crystal movies. Rizzy is a very good player, but everybody and their mother knows that Rizzy does not prepare for matches.
Okay.
And Rizzy goes 0 for 10 points wise, and Brian gets all the steals. And then Brian goes 10 for 10 in whatever he spun, and the match was won by KO. It was a very, very impressive move in my opinion. So good on Brian for kind of recognizing what Dom would be bad at and knowing that Dom's not going to study. So that was kind of a big move, and it's an entertaining match because Brian, again, he doesn't really care about characters, so he doesn't really talk much in the promos. But he won Promo of the Year at the Multiplex Awards for that match. Because if you look at that match, what he did, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. He took Caleb Coho, who was Dominic Rizzy's manager at the time, and Dominic Rizzy's promos, and he cut and pasted them together to look like they were complimenting Brian and crapping on themselves. And it's amazing. I love that. I love it. Like, even Coho admitted that one should have won, and it deservedly did win.
If I can interject, and it's not really relating to what we're talking about, something I just saw. You have a love for Multiplex. You shine when you talk about Multiplex. It's really fun to see that. Now, that being said, is there like a single event that really made the impact of the league growth? Is there something that happened else in the Seed 1 and Seed 32 example you gave? Is there something else that happened that really made a boom to the league?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, that initial team tournament that we did when we changed around 3, that was like, going back on it, like, I think this year's team tournament's going to be much better just because of the caliber of teams we have now, because teams have kind of broken up and reformed, and the new teams are like much stronger and much scarier. I think it's going to be a much more competitive tournament overall, because with the old team tournament, you could kind of guess who was going to be the people who made it to the semifinals. It wasn't like Team 80s won the tournament, and a lot of people kind of expected that to happen, and that is what happened last year. But that just event, the fact that we were kind of able to pull it off, I think that was just kind of a big moment, and it was a very fun tournament. I'm trying to think of like other big things. I think it was just the fact that we were able to get the 32-person tournament done in such a timely manner. We didn't miss a single deadline. We got 3 matches out a week, and without missing a single deadline. And I think that was kind of a big moment, because that's something where, like, a lot of leagues, that's something, nothing against anything, but a lot of leagues will kind of struggle with that just because they don't have the manpower. They have, people are busy, but we are so blessed to have Brian on our team, who is able to just edit like a monster, and just I take very much pride into like scheduling, and like trying to get matches that are like, okay, this is going to be an entertaining match, but I always think of it as like domino. Okay, so if this person beats this person, then this person's going to be playing the winner of this match, and the winner of this match going to be playing the winner of this match, and like, the It's Always Sunny gif of Charlie Day with all like the boards behind him, like the conspiracy theory. That's how I look like sometimes when I'm working out the schedule, because I try to go into it like very much like, okay, here's what everybody's got to do to be in the title picture, right?
You have a vision. You really have a vision of where you want to go. That's good.
Yeah, like that's something where I think that's my biggest contribution to Warzone, because Brian is really like, he's our editor and he used to be our head writer. Now I've taken over as head writer, though Brian is still on there as head writer. Cody is kind of there just for general, like, he's the big idea guy. He's the one who really was pushing for the free for all. He's like the big idea, and he's also there to tell me if he thinks something I'm doing is really stupid. I think my biggest contribution to the group, I host a lot, but my biggest contribution is scheduling. I think that's where, like, I very much pride in trying to schedule matches to where the cream rises to the top, right? I don't like to give anybody easy roads to the title if they don't deserve it. You know, I like to, everybody's got to work for it.
Yeah. So moving on to the next thing here, you had talked a little earlier about like wild and crazy ideas for the league moving forward. You seem to have a couple of things in your back pocket. So I wanted to segue back into that and talk about sort of your vision for the league moving forward in 2020 and some of these crazy, if you could talk about them, some of the crazy ideas that you want to bring to the table here.
So most of these are courtesy of Cody Newberry. So there's only one that I know that I can talk about. The rest of them, I'm not quite allowed to talk about yet. We try to keep things kind of discreet because we want to be able to get something right before we announce it and know that we can do anything perfectly. The one thing that I can announce right now is that we are doing an event called Multiplex Miscellaneous. Or sorry, not Multiplex Miscellaneous, Multiplex Multiverse. Multiplex Miscellaneous is a new division we are starting, which I can talk about later. But Multiplex Multiverse, it's basically a bunch of matches that probably would never happen, but now we are going to make them happen. Like one of the big ones is it's a Warzone civil war between me and Cody. Me and Cody are not allowed to play in the match, but we assemble a team of 4 people each, and it's 4v4, and it's going to be insane. And that's and then Fandom is doing the same thing with Tim Bracala and Caleb Coho, each assembling a team of 4 people. So that's going to be really fun. And we're going to have other just events of like things that people have always wanted to happen yet haven't happened. Warzone specifically, at least now that we've done the free-for-all, for the first 5 weeks, we're kind of going back to business as usual for a while, because a lot of what we're doing now is we're getting the first team title. We want the concept of what a hamburger is all about, which is the full team name of Jake Marangoni and Michael Campbell. And we want them to get their first title defense. So it will be the winner of Light It Up versus Cult Classics, and their match airs on the 7th. And the winner of that plays second reel, which is Thomas Eanes and Matt Queller of Criterion Collection. And the winner of that will play Team 80s in a number 1 contender match.
Very cool.
And yeah, so that should be very, very fun. And then we've got then after that, it's mostly just setting up for the teams tournament. Just getting debut matches in, getting everybody kind of a chance to get into that 16-person team tournament, which we are doing in the spring. And then we are doing another 32-person singles tournament in the summer.
So these matches leading up to the number 1 contender, are those all happening here in February and then leading into the tournament here, as you say?
So I'm going to quick check my schedule. I know most of them are happening in February. One of them might be like the last week of March. So the number 1 contenders match is going to be the second to last week of February. Then we take a break with that picture. And then we have the championship, the match where the winner of that number 1 contender match faces the team championship. That is the first Friday of March. Then after that, we jump right into the 16-person team tournament.
Wow. No rest for the best.
That's stacked. That's a lot of things. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of job to do, Teddy.
Yeah, we do. We're going to be real busy. We didn't even realize when we got started into this just how busy this is going to get. But it's exciting.
Yeah.
Speaking of busy, let's jump into the free-for-all here.
Yes.
I just watched it, finished watching it about an hour before we all got together because I'm a procrastinator and I was out of town all weekend, and out of my own sort of having a vacation if I could. But I was extremely impressed. So it was about 2.5 hours. I want to start by shouting out Brooklyn Vale, who did an incredible job as the only question asker and host throughout the entire program. aside from bringing in challenges and judges. I thought that was incredible. The poor guy sounded like he might have been a little stuffed up as well. So I hope he was feeling well throughout the recording. But it was very impressive for him and an incredibly impressive performance for a lot of the players. I know, Lou, just before we get into your thoughts, Caleb, I know, Lou, you had said there was like 3 sort of player situations that really stood out for you. You'd send me some notes there before. Do you remember what those were? Do you have that ready?
No.
No? Okay. So we'll get into your performance because I made a lot of notes as far as how you did, Caleb, to sort of set you up because I was very impressed. But leading into the free-for-all, it is a lot of a challenge to get all of those people lined up. What was the logistics like putting the show together before we talk about the performances in the actual match?
Yeah, so that was actually something that was very important to us because basically me and Cody were talking about this, and we know that whenever you have an event that has so many people, it can be a nightmare to schedule. So basically, the way that we put it together is like back in like early January, we decided, here's what we're going to do. We're going to message this list of competitors. We're going by like rankings based, like because we want the best of the best. We're going to message all these people and be like, hey, you are invited to the free-for-all, and we are going to be filming it on this day. If you can make it, please let us know. If you can't, no hard feelings, but if you can't, you can't. So that's kind of the way we set it up. It's basically don't call us, we'll call you, invitational based, and then we set the day. So the people who could make it, they get to make it, but so it wasn't this nightmare of what day works for all these people.
My gosh. Imagine the chart for keeping all that together.
We basically just okay, who can be here, who can't? And then even in that event, we had a list of alternates in case people dropped out, because we did have some people drop out a couple hours before the match who were just I got busy. So we just were okay, let's go down the line, message. Nick Carley was one of those.
Okay. Excuse you.
And there were a couple other people that were there as alternates. But and that a lot of that credit goes to Cody Newberry because he was kind of heading the ship since me, Brian, were both playing in it. So that was a lot of that credit goes to Cody on that one.
To go back, Teddy, that we said, you were talking about more the players that stood out for me when I messaged you. For me, I've told Caleb this before. I love Nazario. Nazario, for me, is such an interesting character. He has so much knowledge, and he really shined through in the free-for-all. So I wanted to make a special shout-out to one of my favorites in the league. And the other one was pretty much Brian and Jeremy. They were scary. They really impressed me, and it was not certain competitors would have a specialty into a couple. These seem to know almost all the categories. They really seem to have their hand in every department, and that's really cool.
Yeah,
definitely. I think those are two of the scarier competitors when it comes to round one, especially Jeremy. Jeremy is very scary in round one because there are very few categories that he is not great at, especially if you're going with round one questions. Because if it's an actor or a director question, generally Jeremy is going to hit it 95% of the time. That's how good he is. Usually the stuff that he missed is plot-based, stuff where you kind of have to have seen the movie in order to hit it, right? And even then, he can usually hit it if he knows the movie. But no, Jeremy is he's one of the scariest competitors that he has. Now that he has the title shot, nobody should be sitting. Jake should not be sitting comfortably right now.
Well, this is it. And I agreed when I started watching and saw how Nazario was doing leading through. I was very surprised to see him get knocked out after 7 rounds or in round 8. But then you came in round 9, Caleb, and I was very impressed. You started with a perfect round. Fantastic. And then I think it was the first question of your second round that got you. But you did, I think it was 5, 4, and 4. You were in for 3 rounds, weren't you, before that?
I was only in for 2 rounds, and it was 5 and 3. It was 5.
Oh, okay. So there goes my notes, whatever. No, but that was an epic finish as well within that round. So that was this moment that Jeremy had just come in and knocks everybody out and starts the whole show over again halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
The infamous XX5XX, if you will.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
Yeah, that was really a case of, I think that was almost bound to happen because you could kind of tell that at that point it was kind of getting a little bit clogged, right?
Yeah.
Like at that point, all the best players were all kind of there. So like so many, like Rizzy is a fantastic competitor, especially in round one. He's one of the scariest round one competitors there is. Same with Dustin, Dominic Rizzy. Dustin, same with Kirk, who's very good. So it was really just a case of Jeremy hit one more than everybody else, and it was sayonara for everybody else. I'm kicking myself over that Mean Streets question. That was the one that I wish I would have known.
And that's the question I knew.
That's the one you knew? See, I was going to say, when they called in the round where that happened, they called the question for Kevin Smith. And I'm an enormous Kevin Smith fan. That's one of the reasons I went up to Toronto, was to see his new movie. And I thought, yes, I'm finally going to have a question I can answer through this entire thing. And then they pull out a cop-out question about what, the baseball card that was supposed to be stolen?
Well, yeah, it's what does he sell? And then, yeah, the answer was baseball card.
Yeah.
That's the one Jeremy missed in that round.
Right. And I think he commented and said, like, if you had to pick a Kevin Smith question, that's the one you pull out of the hat. Like, and I felt exactly the same way right before he said it. But it was such an impressive performance. And I think he went 12 rounds to the end, if I remember correctly. And I think he was 4 and 5 points basically right through his run, wasn't he?
So in which round?
Like, because he came in right after you. So he came in round 9 or 10 and basically went straight to the end.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's definitely correct.
So then did he go 4 and 5 points each round right through the end? I don't know if you have that stat in front of you.
Yeah, I don't have the stats for the free for all, so I'm not positive. But that I feel like there were a couple times where he hit some threes like in the last few rounds. I think like I remember there was one time where I think if Jacoby would have hit a question, he would have knocked out Jeremy, and Mark would have won the whole thing. Or not won the whole thing, but he would have come close to winning the whole thing.
Right, because that almost happened right in the second last round there, didn't it? Where it almost knocked everybody out. And so he was incredibly impressive within that performance there. And so now that we've seen such a great free-for-all, the start to the 2020 season, and these matches coming up here, do you expect the level of competition to skyrocket here this year? Like, are people, because you mentioned earlier that some people were going up against, say, a Jeremy or the man that you said was kind of like Drew McQueenie, Brian?
Yeah,
Brian, right. And that there was somebody you had mentioned that had gone in without studying for that. Is that something that you expect to see continue, or has everybody kind of got to pull their boots up and say, okay, if we're going to win, we actually have to put the effort in now?
I think there are always going to be, I think there are a couple competitors that I think are always just kind of going to be what I call classic competitors, where they just show up with the knowledge that they have at hand, and that's what they roll with. And those competitors are always going to do very well because if you have that knowledge, you can usually coast on it, right?
Right.
But I've always said it's good enough to win matches. It's not good enough to win titles.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I feel about it. But I do think this year people are recognizing how much, and I think people kind of recognized it at the end of last year too. People are recognizing how important studying strategy is, especially with the fact that now we are implementing into round 3 a strength option for round 3. Oh. So people are going to be able, because it used to be we just randomized 6 categories we do have round 3. It's not going to be like, you can't go anything super specific for round 3. We have like a generalized list. So it's got to be something like action adventure or Oscars or something like that. But that is a case of, okay, where do you go in terms of strategy with that? And I think that's kind of going to kind of even make the importance of strategy and studying worth even more. And I think that's going to be very, very interesting.
It kind of goes into what I want to ask now, since you've added that change and there is a lot more strategy now into play. Is there a player or team that people really should look out for this year that you think is going to take advantage of that?
That's a great question. I mean, there are there are a ton of people that I think could have really great years. I mean, obviously, Jeremy, Jake, Brian, I think are going to have very good years. I think someone who could have a really good year, Jacoby Bancroft.
Yeah.
I've mentioned him a lot, but I think he's going to have a very good year. Kirk Kawakowski, I think, could have a very good year again. Ethan Beller, again, like these are names that like kind of everybody knows, but I think Cameron Holtzman is someone who I think could have a really good year. He very much does care about studying, so I think he could have a very good year. He is in a singles title picture right now. He is slated to be in a triple threat match, and the winner of that will be in a number one contenders match against me, actually, playing Jake for the title sometime in April, probably the winner of that.
Oh,
I can't hear Teddy.
Teddy, you're on mute. Or maybe not. Our first technical difficulty of the show. Nope. No.
Try leaving and coming back, maybe.
I heard something.
I heard something. Nope, still can't hear you. Maybe try just refreshing your browser, leaving and coming back.
But we can always just edit this part out.
No worries.
Yeah. Since we're gonna edit it, by the way, we're gonna wrap this up in around 10 minutes.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, cool.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
That was my technical difficulty. Technology is beautiful.
Yes, it is.
I was trying to ask make a point and then ask a question. With all the people that you just mentioned, Caleb, who are going to stand out this year from this question, you gave off a list of people that sounded like they continue to stand out. Is there a new player that you think has got the moxie to make their way up the ladder that hasn't had a chance to prove themselves yet?
Good question.
That's a really good question. It's hard because I haven't seen, like, we've got a lot of debut players that'll be coming up that'll be trying to earn their spot in the free-for-all, or not in the free-for-all, in the 32-person singles tournament. But the problem is I haven't seen them play, so I don't know how they're going to do. So that's going to be like that's really the question mark of this, right? Like, who's going to be able to really prove themselves? One person who I will say, he's only had one match, but I think he showed in the free-for-all that he really knows his stuff, is Ryan Payne. I think he could actually do good. I don't know how he is on studying, though. So that's a thing of, like, I just don't know enough of how he's going to do. Another person that I think if he kind of studies, he could be okay is Doug Castle. But, yeah, there are just so many like question marks in the air as far as everybody else.
It's one thing to see a person study. It's another to see them function under the lights in front of the camera, so to speak. So my other question is, you just mentioned a minute ago that you were going to be defending your title here against who? Sorry, because I had the technical difficulties, so I lost track of that.
I don't have a title. Jake Marangoni has the title.
Okay.
My next match, because I'm 5-1 in terms of record, my next match is a number one contenders match against the winner of a triple threat match, which will be Cameron Holtzman, Adam Collins, and then the winner of Andrew Barr and Damian Walker. And that match, Andrew Barr versus Damian Walker, goes up on the 6th, Thursday.
That's
perfect.
Excuse me.
The dive bar, right?
Yeah, Andrew the Dive Bar.
I love that name.
It's a great name.
So would you like to, because there's a bit of it up in the air as to one of these four players is going to end up facing you for the number one contenders, would you like to cut a promo against anybody who'd like to try and take that title shot away from you, or that number one contenders away from you?
Well, I mean, it's hard because I all those guys are great guys. Like, Andrew Barr is really nice. He's a good friend of mine. Cameron Holtzman's one of my best friends in this community. Me, Caleb, Coho, and Cameron kind of dub ourselves Team 19 because we are we are all of the three youngest players in the community. When we all met, we were 19. Now me and Coho are 20. Cameron is still 19.
Wow.
I feel old.
Louis about to have a kid in a couple months here. We're both dads and somewhat older than you are, to be perfectly honest. So
I'm 33, so yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Like that's a case of we are, so we are good friends. So I would love to play Cameron. And I think he and I are like very similar in some aspects, so that could be very different.
Mhm.
And then Adam Collins is somebody who he's such an unknown to me because he came on the scene like in like September or October of last year. So that's just interesting to me because I'm very much like a person who, if I'm playing you, I'm going to watch every match you have ever played in to try to strategize and learn the way you play and learn what types of questions you miss.
Mm.
And it's harder to do that with Adam because he has less game tape. But all three of those guys I would love to play. But probably if I had my pick, probably Cameron. I think Cameron would just be fun just because I think then one of us is playing for the title against Jake. So either way, then I'm happy because then I get to be happy for my friend that he's facing Jake. Or if I win, I get to be happy because I get to face Jake, which is something that I have not done before. I've never played Jake one-on-one, and I think that could be very interesting.
Now,
that is exciting.
Before we wrap up, there's one other special mention, someone I really liked, not just for his skills, but also what he was wearing. My special shout out is to Ryan with his Dragon Ball Z glass. I kind of like went giddy inside. My nerd inside went really happy, and I can't wait to see more of his matches. I was really impressed with what he did to stick 7 rounds in the beginning. That was really cool, and I just love this style. I love also the way he carried himself. So I can't wait to see more of him. All right, so
that's it. I thought that was going to get real weird there for a moment, Lou. Thanks for keeping that classy.
I can make it weirder if you want.
Yeah, maybe next episode. So that's all we've got here for today. We really appreciate you coming out with us here, Caleb. The post after the free-for-all, which is absolutely fabulous. We're really excited to see the next couple matches here. We will be keeping an eye on your number 1 contender match and seeing what goes on there. Why don't you tell the audience about your social medias, where they can find you, and we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, so most importantly, if you want to play or just want to be a part of the community in Multiplex, join the Multiplex Facebook page, which is Multiplex Entertainment. That's where if anybody who's watching wants to play in any of the matches, that's where you can get involved. And then just my general social media, I don't post a lot, so my Twitter is at BCUS_I'm Boatman, because I'm Boatman, because I was like 12 when I made that Twitter handle, and of course I did that. But the one thing I want to shout out is I have a Letterboxd page where I review movies, and that is Letterboxd at Caleb Boatman. So follow me on there if you have a Letterboxd account. I watch a lot of movies because I have to.
Yeah, there you go.
Without getting into too much detail, what's the most recent review you did on Letterboxd?
Review? Jumanji 2.
Oh, really?
And my review was just one sentence long. This movie needs about 24% more Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that like 24% taller Danny DeVito, or just more in general?
No, he needs to be more.
Lou, don't fire me, Lou. All right. Well, thanks very much, Caleb. Lou, tell them where they can find us here, and then we're posting the episode. We're hoping for Thursday, right?
Yeah, give or take if the internet gods permit us. If not, we'll have to sacrifice another version for the internet gods to love us again. But yeah, we're looking for Thursday. You can find us on Schmoes to the North YouTube page and also fan page on Facebook. And also you can find us on the Multiplex Entertainment page. And on myself, for personal plugs, nowhere, because I want to be left alone. And you, Teddy.
And you'll find me as Teddy Francis on Teddy Francis on Facebook, where I am actively posting for our page on the Movie Trivia Schmoedown page, and just recently joined the Multiplex Entertainment page, so you will definitely see me on there as well. Feel free to let me know what you think of my thoughts, and we really appreciate having you here, Caleb. Thanks everybody else for taking us out, and we'll be back with the next episode as soon as we can.
And hashtag #AVengers, baby.
Vengers, that's right. The Canadian faction. We're not in opposition to call to action. We're Canadian, so it's a friendly takeover.
Yes, sir. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night, guys. Thanks, Caleb.
Peace.